All right, MA Marignon, turn 54, and this will hopefully be our last quiet turn for a while. So we finished research in Construction 8, which we've talked about. We researched Blood Magic 1, which I forget why we're doing that, possibly just to have access to imps. Not that we have a lot of blood mages yet, but also it'll allow us to make some blood scouts, who I thought could go underwater. So, that would help us not have to spend death gems and be able to send underwater scouts, but they cannot. Anyway, it doesn't cost too much research, and it will be useful for us, hopefully in the not too distant future. The Eagles we've talked about, the Sleeper, Terracotta Army, all these summons we've talked about. Transmute Fire, so, you can see 1680 gold, a little less, but still that's going to be very nice. Of course, though. Eternal Pyre is dispelled, and you don't get any information about who dispelled it, although I have my suspicions. Probably Asphodel would be my guess, but it could be anybody. We're not actually at war with anyone, so yeah. Asphodel, I think A is in a pretty good position, and then also B is most likely the person who is concerned about it, but isn't interested in replacing it. Because a lot of times if you want to get rid of a global, you'll just cast the same global for more gems, right? Because Dispel, you spend gems and you don't get anything back, even if it's successful. So it's kind of lose-lose, and it doesn't feel great. So oftentimes people only dispel globals that they're really worried about, and then especially if you have a good gem income, it's like, well, you can just take it over. So it's like, maybe Ulm is interested in having some fire gems, right? There's somebody that, can make a lot of lightless lanterns for really cheap. So, maybe they want fire gems for that. But if that was the case, then it's like, why not just overcast Eternal Pyre? Whereas for Asphodel, I don't believe they get much, if any, fire, right? So they probably don't have a very good fire income. So it's going to be very difficult for them to overcast it. But there's definitely reasons, right, that they would want to get rid of it. I'm not even planning on doing that. I mean, sure, maybe eventually. But I am just busy, trying to do silly things and get infinite money and research Construction 8. But, that's not how this player rolls. So we might put the money plan on hold, and, we'll definitely get Eternal Pyre back up. We might not put it back up immediately. We'll see, where our gem income is. We can definitely strip some fire gems off of some commanders, depending on what happens. But I suspect if we attempt, we didn't do a minimum cast, but we did a relatively low cast. So I suspect if we do a minimum cast, it'll just get dispelled again immediately. Because, this dispel, I can't remember how many turns we've had it up, but I feel like it's already paid for itself. I'll go look that up, definitely, because that's important information. But definitely having it dispelled immediately, right, is the roughest. Because, you put in all the gems, and then you get one turn of income back, but, it doesn't pay for itself. And it would certainly be possible, depending on, obviously they may have thought that it's okay, well, maybe they did a really big cast, in which case they used up most, if not all their Astral Pearls. But I feel like a lot of people, especially for these gem generator globals, usually don't overcast them for a ton, and that this player probably knows that, so they probably also didn't dispel for a ton, and they might specifically be looking, to get a double dispel. So yeah, we might actually dump, I don't know, we'll see. I'm undecided, but this is definitely unfortunate. Also a little questionable in terms of, non-aggression packs, another gray area, but, that's fine. We did catch some battles, none of which are ours, because we're not fighting anyone other than our, mysterious Eternal Pyre Dispeller. Well, we're not fighting them, we're just not loving them. So this is a throne somewhere. I feel like this might be the one that is near Abyssia. But yeah, it's not a very strong throne. I'm kind of surprised that, in fact, on the contrary, this is a pretty weak throne. So yeah, I think man is going to come away with this no problem. They got a pretty cool army here. They have a lot of stuff. They have a lot of garbage out front, and they're making some skeletons. Let's go ahead and turn on team colored squares. They are using some of their sacreds up here, which could be sad with all the lightning coming down. But it does look like they have lightning resistance or shock resistance. Not sure if we've seen this bless. Right, I vaguely remember this, the missile range plus 30%, probably for the monks with the bows, which I don't actually see in this army. So yeah, I'm not, maybe he's just holding on to that, hasn't actually like gotten the monks together. Who can say? Definitely all over the place, a couple unusual things in here, so I'm not really sure, how good it is, but it is definitely interesting. Some flaming arrows, so that's good to know. Like, yeah, Thunderstrike, like none of this evocation is crazy. Storm is up, so that's at least evocation 5. Relief is fairly high level, so that's high enchantment level, if I'm recalling, like 7 or 8, so that's useful to know. And then Howl, that's Conjuration 5, but nothing too crazy, right, in terms of research for this point in the game, so, they're not showing us anything, like, too exciting. Decent amount of gem burn, or, gem spend for a throne like this, but, I can't really talk. I spend gems on independence all the time, and thrones can definitely throw you, so I totally understand wanting to make sure that you send a message to anybody who's watching. I think they're going to come away with that without too many casualties. Like, yeah, they just lose some of these warriors, like a few spearmen, like nothing that they can't handle losing. Definitely like a massive army and a massive amount of mage commitment. So like, yeah, this is definitely, like, I think a little too much commitment, really, for any level 2 throne. So, I wonder if like this army has been built to go after a player, right? And it's just grabbing this throne on the way. So it wouldn't surprise me, if this went immediately at somebody, because this is a ton of mages to be mobilizing just to take a throne. Still though, pretty clean, works out for them. And then, yeah, this is the final battle. Against Tianqi, who has done a really good job holding out, particularly against Shiniyama, but they also delayed me like for quite a long time, a lot longer than I was expecting. I have to say, ogres are not great, but if you're looking for someone to hold up walls, ogres are actually pretty good. They're good at that, so like definitely worth it. And then of course, like, yeah, here comes the gifts from heaven. So like I got extremely lucky in the sense that the fort that we took didn't have nearly as many mages, right? So it was much less painful for us. Also, our stuff, our troops are much faster, right? I will say that like using like a ton of archers like this to take a castle, like I don't love that. Especially it looks like, yeah, like they're maybe on fire closest. And so like, yeah, they don't, the units on the walls get like a bonus against missile fire. I don't know exactly how much it is offhand, but it can be fairly difficult. I know sometimes people bring archers specifically to clear out the wall archers, and against some wall archers, this is really rough. Oh man, I can't believe, did Shiniyama win this? Yeah, it looks like maybe. Wow, can't believe the morale on those Daibakemono archers. Yeah, so eventually they get the rout, but that was actually way more painful than I was expecting. And like, yeah, it just kind of highlights like, if a few flyers would be really useful. I don't really know Shiniyama, right? So it could just be a question of like, it's like, hey, like this is what I can put together with my nation. Like fort storms are kind of a pain point for us. But yeah, infantry and archers, not great when you have to storm a fort. And like, yeah, that really hurts. Like almost 70 of these guys. Yeah, they're pretty expensive, 25 gold. That's interesting. I guess it doesn't split out the archer types. Huh, that's weird. If you'll indulge me for a second, I'm pretty sure that those are two distinct unit types, right? Like, yeah, here's the fellow with the two-handed sword, and then here's a fellow with a longbow. I guess he's got the same sword, so like, he counts as the same type of unit. That is interesting. But regardless, like, yeah, fairly expensive storm. From a troop standpoint, right, and like a gold standpoint, Shiniyama has definitely done a really good job of like not risking too many mages. Like, so they do lose one of these cap onlys. I'm pretty sure they're cap only. They're definitely slow to recruit and quite expensive. So these are guys that you want to hold on to. I do know at least that about Shiniyama. So sucks to lose one of them. I wonder if a little more indulgence. He might have been twice borned, right? So maybe not like a real loss. Let's Let's see where, if I can find him. Yeah, here he is. So let's see. Ooh, and he has a skull staff too. Ouch, that sucks. And yeah, he's not twice-born. So, that does hurt a little bit. But like, this is a lot of research that they're getting, right? Because they never brought the mages out in the first place. And, in terms of mage losses in 4 turns, not a big deal. Obviously, Tianchi loses everything, and they do get eliminated, but still an excellent last stand. And I think, absolutely what you want to do to people who try to eat you. And then here's Alm storming the last Machakan fort, and there's pretty much nothing in here, so I don't think there's any need to watch this. Even though Alm is doing the infantry archer storming, but when you're up against just 32 militia against 100 real troops, you're gonna be fine. So definitely can work. We have only one unexpected event, and we lose some tax records, but it's just a swamp, so not such a big deal. The loss of province income does hurt, but it's misfortune. And then there was the arena, which we definitely did not send anyone since we're about to be attacking. Phlegran did, though. They don't know that they're about to be attacked. And it's kind of interesting that Fascia chose to send someone. They got to be somewhat down to it. But they decided that they wanted to risk a mage, and this is the one where you can cast spells. So, she's brought a lesser air elemental in, which actually did manage to stun this fellow, but yeah, it's not enough against a tyrant. Although, he doesn't have regeneration, and you don't regenerate between arena fights. So that damage definitely could matter. My money, wow, I can't even say my money. I saw the next couple battles. I think we've seen this fellow before. Yeah, he's a hero and everything, extraordinary agility. That's actually a really good trait for a melee fellow, and he has melee in spades. He's also been given a Pokemon item, so he gets some Vineman. And this guy still has the damage on him. Doesn't have any kit either, so that's kind of an interesting choice, because it's you're risking an expensive commander. People obviously I risk nothing. Okay, he's got Phoenix Pyre on himself, which he doesn't is not fully fatigued out, right? So it kept him alive. Now he comes back with full health, so that's nice. But anyway, it's you risk a really valuable mage, but then you don't give him any equipment. So it's kind of, I don't know, splitting the difference. But it sort of feels like, if you're going to send in a real person, risk the gems too, maybe? I don't know. But yeah, this Phoenix Pyre is really doing work for him. But it looks like he was still asleep at that point, so that triggers the actual kill. And again, Phoenix Pyre, it's just not really useful. They're that useful if you don't gear for it. You really need some reinvigoration gear if you actually want it to keep you alive long term. If your goal is just to explode in someone's face and they don't have a lot of fire resistance, that can be really useful, right? Where it's just maybe you come back once, or even if you don't come back, right, you just blow up and big fire explosion. Sometimes that has its uses, and I'm not really sure what the plan was there for man. Clearly they thought that they were going to have more time, but this guy's got flying boots. I do think any kind of flight in the arena, or any sort of 1v1 situation, is really useful, especially for a guy like this who's not really even a mage, right? He's just a priest, so he can bless himself, but he can't really have a long complicated script to go through, right? So it's just bless and go in. In fact, did he even? Yeah, he did. So it's bless and then just go in immediately, right, before other people are ready. And then we have Shiniyama sent somebody in. This is another Bakemono sorcerer, also unkitted, also not twice-born. These guys are size 3, right? So it is a fairly expensive twice-born, but still, you got to figure it's okay, you're sending him into the arena. Decent chance he's going to die. Horde of Skeletons, Skelly spam is useful in the arena as well as on the battlefield. But again, right, the flight is going to help a lot here, and he does land in the back. I just won one round. These skeletons are going to dissolve anyway soon because they have no leadership. Asphodel's Thug is pretty dangerous, and he gets the Champion's Cuirass. Don't really know how good that is, but I didn't. He did risk a lot, but a pretty tough contender. And then it looks like the jig is up for us, because these are our assassins, unfortunately, that are getting patrolled out. And these aren't even forts. So yeah, it looks like these are just random patrol groups of Phlegran Axe Warriors. So that is sad, because this is some gems, and this should trigger for Phlegran that it's okay, why, maybe one assassin, maybe you might be maybe he's going somewhere else. But like 2 assassins, that's pretty suspicious. So I think we just gave away the element of surprise, so that is sad. And that is always the risk, when you're sneaking stuff around ahead of time in someone's territory. I'll have to say, I really was not expecting, neither of those were forts. So I felt like, okay, as long as, we just stay away from forts, we should be relatively safe. We pushed a decent amount of scouts through. But I guess, Phlegran is doing a good job of moving around patrol groups and then, patrolling on and off in various areas. Again, possibly more worried about Asphodel, right? Because Asphodel gets a lot of stealthy stuff. So, maybe a little bit worried about getting elfed. But unfortunately, we're the ones who get caught. Well, maybe Asphodel got caught up in some of those nets as well. But we definitely did. And then we breached the fortification to Bandar Log, so that's good. We may not head in immediately. We might, I can't remember. Hopefully we scryed on Bandar this turn. We'll have to take a look. And then, Menchaca also is permanently eliminated. I'll catch you guys after the cut. All right, this is the situation and what we did about it. I'm recording this from the future. Of course, we'll try to avoid any spoilers. The main thing, of course, this turn is we are launching our attack against Phlegran. This is mostly fire elemental raids, though we do have this knight group here. I believe that's the only knight group. Otherwise kind of minimal bodyguards in a lot of cases, though we have a decent number of bodyguards here, like a heavier, fire elemental raid, because we're concerned about some patrollers at this location on top of this fort. And if it weren't for the fact, right, that we had some assassins patrolled out this turn, I feel like, unless if Phlegran managed to scout this, then they would definitely know, maybe not definitely, but I would be highly suspicious of a stack this large, even close to the border. But it's not immediately on the border, and we have been doing some patrolling in this location. So it's possible that Phlegran doesn't know about this stack, and, we're mostly attacking with kind of smaller groups. So we'll see. We're hitting most of the bordering provinces on the first turn of the war. I feel pretty good about this attack. Unfortunately, we didn't quite manage to get this guy. Oh no, we got him in position, but we just didn't get him. We didn't loop somebody all the way around, so we can hit both of these provinces. But still, I feel like in terms of number of attacks that we're making, it's not an elfing or anything, but for a human nation that marches real slow, we're hitting a lot of provinces on the first turn of the war, which is good. We'll see how successful we are. And of course, behind that, we have 2 armies moving out. Pretty similar to, what we've used before. We've got our crossbowmen, of course, flaming arrows. We'll put up solar eclipse. We have an infantry front line, our knights, of course. We've added to it, some great eagles for siege strength, as well as some of our aircasters who, let's see, we've got one of which with communion gear, so she can join into a communion, and then a crossbow so that she doesn't immediately burn out the witch hunters who do not have air. So, we can't build a stable, long-term communion that's going to have air in it. But with this setup, we can have her cast fog warriors, so that's a pretty significant upgrade for our armies. And then we have a second army moving out in this direction, if I recall, perhaps a little on the weaker side, still fairly powerful. Looks like roughly a 50-50 split. Of course, we do have paladins in both armies, it looks like. Fewer in this one, if I recall. Just, let's see, 2 guys here. So some anti-super combatant tech in that form. We probably also have, hopefully, at least one fellow who's set up for some soul slaying. This guy's been boosted in Astral and been given at least, 1 penetration item. Though we certainly could improve on that. And we also have fog warriors. So we have fog warriors in both armies. So, these are pretty strong armies. Certainly you can get this level of tech earlier than turn 54, so it's not like we're going to be hitting with a major tech advantage. Also, I think, Phlegran, also a fire nation, also a human nation, has some pretty cheap researcher type mages, and they've also taken magic scales, so it's entirely possible. We haven't really seen a lot of Phlegran's research yet. But they could be where we're at or possibly even ahead of us. We'll have to see how that goes. Certainly, at least in terms of on the immediate border, right? There's not a lot of mages here. In fact, it looks like there's no mages in this location. And in this location, there's a tyrant, at least, but otherwise we don't really see much in the way of mages. And the troop quantities, certainly, while not insignificant, are probably a little under what we're bringing to bear. So it's looking like, at least for the first few turns, like we should be able to maintain decent momentum. But we unfortunately don't have like great scouting deeper into their territory. We've definitely jumped on a few forts at points. And we know that there's definitely substantial forces back here. I believe this throne we got patrolled out of at one point. And I mean, we know there's a substantial amount of stuff back here. But yeah, our scouting coverage of Phlegran is not ideal, so we're kind of going into this war not blind, but we don't have a complete picture. Of course, the fact that they're still trying to finish off Xibalba is more or less a plus. We did talk about how we were planning on Xibalba being an early target in the war, and the fact that they're still alive makes it a little more up in the air in terms of whether, do we want to go after Xibalba or, do we want to free them? We'll have to think about that, and decide in the coming turns. Otherwise, we are storming Bandar this turn. And there's not a whole lot left in here. The god hasn't come back, so the Bless is offline. Pretty high confidence in this. The Blood Vengeance was really the main thing that was so concerning, about these summons. Of course, we probably will have to eat a decent number of Soul Slays, but we have the units, right, to withstand that, certainly. We have the numbers, so it shouldn't really be that much of a problem. And in terms of combat power, I mean, we are attacking a fortification, so we're not going to be able to bring our numbers to bear as much, although a lot of our numbers are crossbowmen, and they're pretty far forward, and we've just set them to fire. I actually find that for archers, just letting them choose their own targets tends to be the best, and so we should be able to get a decent number of crossbow bolts into the back with the squishy mages. We have some cavalry, they should get back there pretty quickly. All this to say, they're not going to have a whole lot of time to be doing soul slaying. So that will hopefully conclude that war. And then speaking of wars being concluded, of course, Tianqi has been eliminated. I haven't been contacted by Shiniyama about a nap cancellation or anything like that. So, fingers crossed they'll decide to go elsewhere. They don't have an abundance of appealing targets. They may choose to jump in against Phlegran, although I don't really know what their troop concentrations are down here. Obviously, they brought a lot of units up to fight against Tianqi, so I imagine a lot of their forces are over in this direction. Of course, we know that Agartha took a pretty serious loss, so, they might be interested in that. They are eating a little bit of some of Jotunheim's old territory, which I think is Ermor, yeah. So they'll at least get a bunch of death gems, which will be nice in terms of twice borning the Bakemono sorcerers. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. We did gateway out a bunch of our units, I believe. Yeah, we're kind of low on troops in this area, so we are doing some recruitment. And though they only have a narrow border, they might try to vulture a little bit of Abyssia, because here's the throne that Man took, and, as I suspected, this army is being used to attack another player. I'd forgotten that this throne was actually in Abyssia's cap circle, so this is pretty much a declaration of war anyway, although Man definitely also separately has declared war. Man does have some stealthy units, so I suspect there's kind of some limited elfing that went on here. Abyssia, of course, had a really long and grindy war against Pangaea, and then has since subbed out, so, Abyssia's position is not good, but it is being played by a pretty good player right now. But Man's position is such that I don't think they'll have too much trouble with Abyssia, especially bringing all of this to bear. And then the Fascia, Vanheim conflict has more or less turned into a, Fascia Asphodel and somewhat Asphodel Vanheim conflict, right? So you can see not a whole lot of Vanheim flags out here anymore. And, while Fascia is besieging this throne that Asphodel took, inside of Fascia's cap circle a little while ago, if I recall. And Fascia has cracked it. I just think there's, Fascia's just, they've been having a rough time of it, and Asphodel's pretty large, and this player's pretty good. We can see that this fort of Fascia's has been cracked, and there's also this absolutely massive force moving up to reinforce it, or possibly, go sit on top of the capital. So I think Fascia's days are numbered. And then after that, if Asphodel chooses, they could certainly attack Vanheim. It is an awkward border. So, we'll see what Asphodel decides to do, though this definitely does take the pressure somewhat, off of our border. This massive stack was a little on the close side in terms of comfort. And probably the final note is our scouting on Eriu is perhaps a little lax. Right? We do have a non-aggression pact, and, I was feeling somewhat comfortable at this point, but Eriu is, I think, pretty much done vulturing Menchaca. I believe Menchaca has been eliminated at this point, or certainly very close to being eliminated. So, Eriu is kind of unoccupied and massive right on our border. We do have a non-aggression pact, but probably should have slipped a few more scouts into their territory to figure out, what they're probably planning on doing next. That said, like, I do feel like they have better targets than us, like probably either Agartha or Vanheim, both of whom have taken fairly serious losses recently and are not as large as we are. But definitely worth noting, that we have a very large and pretty unoccupied power on our border right now. And then the final thing of note is we are starting to take advantage of that Construction 8 research by forging the Alchemist Stone. Certainly not the most powerful artifact out there, but, it's part of our plan. So we're going to put it together before moving on to, forging a few other artifacts. And then, of course, we did lose Eternal Pyre. Don't actually have the fire gems to put it back up immediately. So we'll probably try to, our fire income without it is not that high. I mean, 16 is not bad, but it's not amazing by any stretch. So we'll probably wait a few turns. Like I said, I don't want to do a minimum cast. On the other hand, like the longer that it stays down, the more likely, somebody else might try to put it up themselves. So we definitely want to get that up sooner rather than later, especially considering we're forging the Alchemist Stone. That's not going to be that useful if we don't have a lot of fire gems coming in. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 54.